Let's see one of the more interesting controls, the picker control. Going to make a new project here. Go into my XIB file, and with the object library open, and I'll make sure all objects are viewable here, I'm just going to filter on the word picker. I can see that I have two of them here, and I'm going to work with the date picker right now, which is the most straightforward one. We'll see the other one next. We'll drag it onto this interface, making sure to slide it into the right spot. It's quite easy to move it off screen. And with that selected, I can see that in my attributes inspector, this picker control has multiple different modes. We can be just a time, just a date and time, a countdown timer. I'm going to select just date and use that. Now you'll find that when this picker control is run, by default it'll just set itself to today's date. You could write a little bit of code to change that if you wanted to. What I want to do is allow the user to select a date from any of the possible options here, and then find out what day of the week that was. So I'm going to go back into my code, quit out of this simulated application, remove the filter from my object library so I can find a round rect button, drag that on, and just type in, what day is that? This button will need to send a message to our code, so it will be an IB action. I'm going to hook that up, give myself a bit more room here, and switch to the assistant editor. I'll right-click the button, control-click works too, and connect the touch up inside over here into my interface. The action that I'll call display day, and hit connect. Similarly, what I'm going to need is to address this date picker control from my code, so I need to hook this up as an outlet. I can right-click somewhere here. I'm not interested in the picker events. What I'm interested in is the referencing outlet connection. The benefit for me of using the right-click menu is that when we drag across to the interface, it doesn't ask whether we want to insert an action, outlet connection. We've already limited it, so it knows to insert an outlet. I'll let go. All I have to provide is a name, and I'll call it date picker. And I should be now ready to add my code. I'm going to change back to the standard editor view, turn on my project navigator so I can select the view controller implementation file. Down towards the bottom, I should find where it's inserted the IB action skeleton. I'm just giving myself a few more lines to bring it up closer to the top. Let's take this line by line. When the button is touched, we're going to grab whatever date the user has just selected on the date picker. So I'll create a new NSDate variable and set it equal to the date picker date property. Next, I'm going to create an NSDate formatter object. We've seen this briefly already. What a date formatter allows us to do, not surprisingly, is format our dates in all sorts of different ways than the internal representation of an NSDate object, which is going to be date and time and seconds and hours and minutes and all this stuff that I don't want. What a date formatter object does is use Unicode date format. It gives us hundreds of combinations of different ways of writing this out. If I open up a web browser, what I can do is quickly search for something like Unicode date format patterns. And actually the first entry here is the date format official document on unicode.org. And in fact, I'm going to click the link to jump to date format patterns here, which tells us that a date pattern is a string of characters. We have a few examples here of writing out these letters and what result that would give us for a particular date. If I scroll down a little further here, we'll see the date field symbol table. We have different kinds of letters for representing years, quarters, months, weeks, days, periods, zones. What I'm interested here is this, weekday. We're using the letter E, the uppercase E. If I use 1 through 3 E's, that will give me the short version, like Tues. But if I use 4 uppercase E's, that will be Tuesday. That's what I want. I'm going to jump back into my code and show you how to do it. I've created the formatter object, just called formatter. And I'm going to say set date format passing in a string, which will just be 4 E's. Now I'm going to create a new NSString object, which is going to contain that day of the week. And I'll get it by telling the formatter to go ahead and create a string from the date chosen. This is the one that we just pulled out of the date picker. So the formatter is transforming that date using its set format into just the day of the week. Next, I'm going to create a new NSString object, and I'm going to use the init with format initializer so I can construct a message here with a placeholder in it. That's A, and whatever the day is going to be. I need a placeholder here, which I'll use %@, close the quote, comma, and then weekday, which is the string that's going to actually represent that day of the week. So that will construct our message. And then the final thing I'll do is pop up an alert. I don't actually have a label or any other way of getting it out to the interface, so I'll use a UI alert view. Using the init with title version, just break that apart to make it a bit more readable. And I'm going to do a very simple UI alert view here. Title of the alert will be, what day is that? The message will be MSG, which is what we just created on line 71. Hit tab. We don't need any delegates, so that will be nil. The cancel button title can just be thanks. And other button titles, we don't need any other buttons, so I'll just leave that at nil. Square bracket to close this. Just break that onto the separate line, and we have a UI alert view. Finally, I need to show it. Save it. Hit Command B to build. Make sure everything's looking okay. No issues. Build succeeded. Looks good. Go ahead and run this. So I'll spin a few of the wheels a few times. Let's find April the 4th, 1992. Apparently that was a Saturday. On March the 4th, 2028, that'll be a Saturday too. Let's double check that the 3rd is a Friday. Looks good. So yes, a simple application, but this is how you'd start to work with a date picker. Hook it up to a button in your code and manipulate it. Now, Picker is capable of more than just dates, so we'll see that next.